World War I is often remembered as an old war, frozen in black and white photographs of muddy trenches and exhausted soldiers. Many people assume it was simple, unavoidable, or less significant than World War II. That belief could not be more wrong. World War I reshaped the modern world more violently than any conflict before it. It destroyed empires, erased generations, and created political tensions that still exist today. To understand the 20th century, one must first understand this war. More than 70 million soldiers were mobilized worldwide. Over 16 million people were killed, and at least 21 million were wounded. Entire nations were psychologically scarred forever. Yet despite its importance, many of the most shocking truths about World War I remain hidden or oversimplified. These 7 facts reveal what the war truly was, and why it still matters. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in June 1914 is often taught as the main cause of World War I. In reality, it was only the spark that ignited an already unstable situation. The war had been building for decades. By the early 20th century, Europe was trapped in extreme nationalism. Countries believed military strength was proof of superiority and honor. War was no longer feared, it was expected. Between 1900 and 1914, military spending in Europe increased by over 50%. Germany, Britain, France, and Russia raced to expand their armies and navies. Each nation believed preparation was the only path to survival. Secret alliances made the situation even more dangerous. If one nation entered war, others were obligated to follow. A small conflict could instantly become a continental disaster. Political leaders knew this risk, yet instead of slowing down, they accelerated toward conflict. When Franz Ferdinand was assassinated, diplomacy collapsed in weeks. World War I was not an accident, it was a failure of restraint. Contrary to popular belief, most soldiers in World War I did not spend their days fighting. The majority of their time was spent waiting to be attacked, waiting for orders, and waiting to survive. Studies suggest that only 15 to 20% of soldiers actually fired their weapons in combat. Many never saw the enemy face to face. Fear and anticipation were often worse than battle itself. Trenches became prisons carved into the earth. They were flooded with water, infested with rats, and filled with disease. Soldiers slept inches away from decomposing bodies. Trench foot was so common that thousands of soldiers lost toes, feet, or legs. Poor hygiene and constant moisture destroyed flesh. Amputations became routine. The mental toll was devastating. Soldiers exposed to constant shelling developed uncontrollable shaking, paralysis, and muteness. Doctors called it shell shock, not understanding it was psychological trauma. World War I broke the human mind on an industrial scale. World War I was the first war where chemical weapons were used extensively. Poison gas turned the battlefield into a nightmare where even air could kill. The first large-scale gas attack occurred in 1915. Chlorine gas drifted silently into enemy trenches, burning lungs and suffocating soldiers where they stood. Mustard gas was even worse. It caused severe burns, blindness, and internal damage. Victims often suffered for weeks or months before dying. Over 1.3 million soldiers were injured by chemical weapons. Approximately 90,000 died directly from gas exposure. Many survivors were permanently disabled. Gas masks became standard equipment, but early versions were unreliable. Soldiers lived in constant fear of invisible death. Chemical warfare horrified the world so deeply that international bans were created afterward. Yet the psychological terror of gas never left military planning. World War I erased an entire generation from Europe. In some countries, nearly a third of young men never returned home. France lost almost 27% of men aged 18 to 27. Germany lost over 2 million soldiers. Russia suffered massive losses both in combat and civil unrest. Entire villages were left without fathers, sons, or brothers. Some towns lost every man of fighting age. Family bloodlines ended forever. This demographic collapse caused severe labor shortages. Farms, factories, and offices were left empty. Women entered the workforce in unprecedented numbers. They replaced men in factories, transportation, and heavy industry not as empowerment, but as survival. When the war ended, society could never return to what it once was. Too many were gone. World War I forced rapid technological advancement at a terrible cost. Many modern technologies were born not from innovation, but desperation. Tanks were introduced to break trench stalemates. Though crude at first, they changed warfare forever. Armored vehicles became the future of battle. Airplanes evolved rapidly during the war. What began as reconnaissance tools became deadly weapons. Dogfights filled the skies for the first time. Submarines transformed naval warfare. German U-boats sank thousands of ships, including civilian vessels. This strategy nearly starved Britain into surrender. Medical advancements also surged. Blood transfusions became safer. Plastic surgery developed to treat facial injuries. Prosthetics improved to help amputees. World War I accelerated progress, but only because humanity had no choice. The Treaty of Versailles officially ended World War I in 1919. Instead of healing Europe, it ensured another war would come. Germany was forced to accept full responsibility for the conflict. This single clause humiliated the nation and destroyed its global standing. Germany lost 13% of its territory and 10% of its population. All overseas colonies were taken away. Its military was reduced to 100,000 soldiers. The treaty demanded 132 billion gold marks in reparations. This amount was impossible to pay. Germany's economy collapsed under inflation and debt. Poverty, anger, and resentment spread rapidly. Political extremism flourished. Democracy weakened. The treaty punished instead of repaired. Within 20 years, Europe was at war again. World War I did not just end lives, it ended empires. The Ottoman Empire, which had ruled for over 600 years, collapsed. Its fall reshaped the Middle East permanently. The Austro-Hungarian Empire dissolved into multiple new nations. Ethnic tensions exploded almost immediately. The Russian Empire collapsed into revolution. Civil war followed, leading to the creation of the Soviet Union. The German Empire fell, ending centuries of monarchy. Political instability replaced imperial rule. New borders were drawn by victors with little understanding of local cultures. These decisions created conflicts that still exist today. World War I did not end history, it rewrote it violently. The war was called the war to end all wars. That promise was a lie. World War I proved how fragile civilization truly is. It showed what happens when nationalism, fear, and ambition overpower diplomacy. The lessons of World War I are not just historical, they are warnings. When diplomacy fails, humanity pays the price.